Did the Tibetans ever got to vote? Well, let me tell you something about this history, and I don't understand why you post something like that on my unrelated post. Is it that you are saying, well, the Chinese deserve all the hate that we are creating towards them? Anyway, this is your favorite half Chinese. Let me tell you something or ask you something. Why don't you ask whether the indigenous native people from America can get a vote whether they want the Europeans on their continent, yes or no? Why don't you ask them? Why is nobody troubled by the natives of America being put in camps? And they gave it a nice fancy name, a reservation, which is essentially a concentration camp, and they have to abide by the rule of Europeans who came there to occupy their land by force. That never happened to Tibet, but we will get there in a moment. And nobody, including you, is wondering why they don't get to vote. I want you to go to the Washington and tell them the natives need to get a vote whether the Europeans can stay on their continent, yes or no. They don't. The native are not even in the government of the United States. They're not even in the government of Canada. They have nothing to say. Yet you don't think that they need to have a vote on their own land because they have to listen to Europeans who are occupying it until this very day by force. You don't believe me? Try and get some land back for them. See what will happen. Then we have Australia. Why isn't it a problem that those Aboriginals have to live under a rule of Europeans? Why? Why is that? It is not the land of Europeans. How do I know? Because I live in Europe. And we don't live anything near Australia. So why don't the Aboriginals get to vote? Why are they oppressed on their own land by Europeans by force? And if you don't believe me that it is by force, try and take some land there and give it back to Aboriginals. See what will happen. So then we can go to all the colonies. Did all these victims of our colonies get to vote whether the Europeans could rule over their lives and enslave them? Yes or no? They didn't. Oh, why don't they get to vote? Are they less human? Or doesn't it fit in your narrative? They need to get a vote. How many African nations already said that Europeans need to leave? Why are the Europeans still there? And when a country is voting, why is the West not accepting the vote? Like in Venezuela. The overly vast majority voted for Maduro. Why don't you accept the vote? So you wouldn't even accept the vote if it would be happening in China. While they are voting for their delegates. So there's a vote. Because you need to have your vote so much, there you have it. Now let me tell you something about Tibet and its history with China, which goes back over 1,000 years. Most of these European countries didn't even exist back then, let alone their colonies and let alone their occupied land like America, Australia. It goes back to the Tang dynasty. At that time, it was an alliance of the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907, and at that time it was called Tubo. You can read about it in the Old and the New Tang book. It is very well documented. Famous stories also from princesses of Wenjing, etc., etc. Then later, after the Tang collapse, Tibet fell into a lot of problems, and there were a lot of tribes who were fighting with each other all the time, and that went on for like 400 years. And then came the Yuan dynasty. Those were the Mongolians who took over everything and made it one with China on a legal basis. And in this way, they saved Tibet from destruction of all these wars that they were having. And this is how they got incorporated into China. And later the Yuan collapsed, and the other dynasties took over. And it went all the way to the last Qing dynasty. And the proof what we have of that it was also of the Qing dynasty, is exactly with the border dispute what is still going on now between China and India, because that piece of land is Tibet, and that was colonized by the Brits, and they had the Qing dynasty force them to sign it off. It's all well documented. You can just look it up. So they acknowledged that it was a part of the Qing dynasty back then, which is China. Then you had the revolutions, and after the second revolution, after the Qing dynasty, the Communist Party of China won. And in 1951, there was a Tibetan delegation that went off to Beijing and signed the 17-point agreement as a reiteration that Tibet is a part of China. Even Dalai Lama became a Communist Party member for 10 years. And he was a high-ranking member, and he was ruling over Tibet. The only thing that was troublesome to Dalai Lama was that at one point in time, serfs were not allowed anymore because communist rule needs equality for everybody. And serfs, as you would know, are more or less not much more than a slave. You actually had 3 positions of serfs under Dalai Lama in Tibet, and also before that. Once a serf, always a serf. You can never become something else, and you will always stay in the rank that you were born. Did those people get a vote? No. Why wasn't that a problem? Shouldn't they be able to vote to at least have determination of their own life? They didn't get to vote. That was the old Tibetan system. Whatever Dalai Lama's reasoning was, he decided one day to collaborate with the CIA. And there he staged the coup d'etat. And he fled, leaving Tibet for what it is. And then the communists came and created the new government of Tibetan, because it consists of Tibetans that rule over their own people because they know and understand their culture better and the needs of their people better. And that is when all the serfs were liberated, because it was directly abolished, because slavery is not allowed under communism. Neither is it allowed under Buddhism. I don't want people to think that it is allowed under Buddhism, and that is why I have no idea why Dalai Lama never stopped it while he could. As many times I have mentioned this, Shakyamuni Buddha, it was his dream to liberate everybody also from the chains, which means also from slavery. However, he took distance from the throne at a very young age, so he couldn't do it anymore. Dalai Lama, however, was a totally different person. He could. There was no reason for his family to have 6,000 serfs. Suffering. 95% of Tibet were serfs. 5% were having all the land. Why was there no vote for that 95%? I think they were very happy that Dalai Lama left them, so they could now determine and develop their own land and also have the benefits for it. Because when you look at it now they're allowed to go to school. Now they are allowed to choose whatever job they want. They can go on a vacation. They don't have to be afraid that when they are resigning from their job, that the owner of the company will come and do the most heinous things to them. Like, I cannot even say these kind of things on TikTok because it would get me in trouble. But everybody can, I recommend everybody to go and look up what the punishment were. And especially from in the Potala Palace, if the serfs would be running away. There are many stories of ex-serfs that already shed a light on it. It's not hard to find. So why was it not important for those people to be able to vote? Dalai Lama made votes in the Communist Party. I have pictures of it in other videos. It's amazing old pictures. They voted. So he, as a representative of the people of Tibet, as he was at that time the spiritual leader, made the commitment that it became a part of China. However, somehow he would enjoy to live his life with treacherous people from the CIA, but that, whatever his thinking was, maybe he didn't want to get rid of the serfs. I don't know. I never asked him. I wouldn't be able to ask him because they will not let you ask this question. Anyway, that is the history of Tibet. So why do they need to vote under what? They are already voting for their representatives. And it has been longer a part of China than the United States exists. So until the day that all these colonies and all these occupied land like the United States, Canada, Australia, ask their indigenous people to vote whether their European oppressors can stay or not stay, I don't see why all of a sudden people in Tibet need to vote whether they want to stay with China or not stay with China. But I can tell you one thing. The Tibetans right now, they would do nothing more than be a part of China because it benefited their lives. Their lives have improved tremendously. Equal rights, which sounds crazy, but they didn't have those equal rights because once a serf, always a serf, and when you are born as a serf, you're just done for the rest of your life. Which is a ridiculous mindset, especially when they are into Buddhism. But the highest one is not following the full instructions of the Buddhist teachings. That's the truth. Now, when it comes to the political forms, as long as you are not a citizen of China, it is not up to you how China should be ruled. China is China. It is not a colony of the West. Neither does it need to follow the West. Capiche? Do you understand that the Chinese people have chosen their own path? Do you understand that the reason that they have communism is because of the Western people? Because of the oppression of the Western people who are stealing land in China, including parts of Tibet, which is now still a problem. So why should they have an inferior political system like we have in the West? Because we in the West have the most inferior system you can think of. Just think of it. We had colonized almost the entire world, and look at what we are having. Crumbling infrastructure, people getting poorer by the day, millions living on the street. We have opium problem. China has come from that, having nothing, number 11 poorest country in the world, becoming the largest economy, surpassing the United States in 2014, according to purchasing power parity, creating the most safe country in the world with the most advanced infrastructure, and a place where everybody is equal and can become somebody. They alleviated poverty for all the Chinese. That includes the 56 ethnic minorities, and those also include the Tibetans. And you need your fallacious form of government, which is not serving anybody other than the elites, to be placed in China? No, thank you. I hope they will never do that. Nobody in the West is happy how their country is going. Not a single person. So why do you want the Chinese to be unhappy? You go and solve your own problems and leave China alone. It's none of your business. They're not messing with us. Why do you think you have the right to mess with them? Anyway, this was your favorite half Chinese. Let me know what you all think of this in the comment section, but please keep it respectful. We're not uncivilized barbarians, unlike some others who think they can tell other nations how they have to run their country. Have a nice day. Your favorite half Chinese.